Good evening, everyone, and buckle up because this might be the biggest weather story we've covered all summer. Tonight, we've got a rare four-way collision brewing across the West. The hottest day of the year baking Southern California, a tropical storm spinning off the coast that could become a full-blown hurricane by Friday, dry lightning threatening to spark new wildfires in the Sierra Nevada, and a wall of monsoon moisture marching in from the desert Southwest. Any one of these would be the lead story on a normal night. Tonight, we've got all four happening at once. So before we get into the details, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me two things: where you're watching from and what the sky actually looks like above you at this exact moment. Are you baking under triple digits? Did you feel a raindrop today? Is there smoke haze on the horizon? I read these live, so let me know. I'll shout out a few of your comments later in the broadcast. All right, let's get into it because there is a lot to cover tonight. Let's start with what most of you are feeling right now, no matter where you are on the map. Heat. Today marked the peak of what's been building all week across the Southwest, and it did not disappoint in the worst possible way. In Sacramento, we're sitting right around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius this afternoon, a classic scorcher for the Central Valley, but one that's arriving alongside some unusually sticky, humid air thanks to monsoon moisture riding in from the south. That combination, high heat plus high humidity, is what pushes the feels-like temperature into genuinely dangerous territory, especially for anyone working outdoors or without reliable air conditioning. Head south into the Los Angeles Basin and the San Fernando Valley, and today has been, without exaggeration, the hottest day of the year so far. We're talking afternoon highs pushing 110 degrees Fahrenheit in spots. An extreme heat warning has been in effect across much of Los Angeles County since Tuesday morning and runs through Thursday evening, covering the valleys, the mountains, and inland portions of the coastal plain. Forecasters with the National Weather Service and local meteorologists have been blunt about this one. High risk for heat illness, high UV index, and real potential for daily record highs to fall. Inland valleys throughout the broader region are sitting in the low 100s, which is uncomfortable but manageable with basic precautions. It's the desert communities where things get genuinely extreme. We're looking at 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit across the low deserts, and Death Valley, as it so often does this time of year, is flirting with the 120 degrees Fahrenheit mark. If you're traveling through desert highways this week, that is not hyperbole level heat. That's the kind of heat where a car breakdown can become a medical emergency in under an hour. Carry extra water, tell someone your route, and avoid midday travel through those corridors if you can help it. Now here's an interesting wrinkle that a lot of people don't think about. California's coastline is once again living in an entirely different climate zone this week. While the valleys bake, coastal communities are sitting comfortably in the mid-70s to low 80s. That's a swing of up to 45 degrees Fahrenheit between the coast and the inland valleys on the same day, in the same state. If you're near the beach tonight, you're getting off easy, but that humidity from the monsoon moisture is creeping in even along the coast, so it'll feel muggier than a typical July evening, even where the thermometer reads mild. The good news, if you can call it that, relief is coming, just not overnight. We're expecting a gradual cooling trend to begin Thursday and continue into early next week as onshore flow strengthens and cloud cover increases. But gradual is the key word. Temperatures will still be running above normal across much of the West Coast, even after this initial peak breaks. So don't put the fans away just yet. I'm already seeing some of your comments coming in. Someone from the Inland Empire says it hit 108 on their car thermometer this afternoon, and someone up near Truckee says they actually heard thunder rumbling in the distance a couple hours ago. Keep those coming, because that thunder is exactly where we're headed next. Yesterday brought a preview of what monsoon season looks like when it really gets going. Thunderstorms fired up across the Sierra Nevada, up into northeastern California, and down in San Diego County, producing frequent lightning strikes across some fairly remote and fire-prone terrain. Today, the pattern has shifted slightly. Thunderstorm chances within California itself have eased back a bit. We're mainly watching the area near the California-Mexico border and the higher mountain terrain for scattered activity, with forecasters noting roughly a 10 to 40% chance for thunderstorms in some of these zones, with the highest probability earlier in the day. But zoom the camera out beyond California's borders, and the story is much bigger. We are in the thick of an active, widespread monsoon pattern across essentially the entire interior Southwest right now. Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico are all seeing widespread thunderstorm development. And some of these storms are packing a real punch: frequent lightning, gusty and erratic outflow winds, and in parts of Arizona specifically, the potential for haboobs. If you're not familiar with that term, a haboob is a towering wall of dust and sand kicked up by the outflow winds from a collapsing thunderstorm. They can reduce visibility to near zero in a matter of minutes and are genuinely hazardous for anyone driving through them. If you're in central or southern Arizona this week, keep an eye on the sky to your west and south during the afternoon and evening hours, and know what to do if you find yourself driving into one. Pull off the road, put your vehicle in park, turn off your lights, and wait it out. Now, where this gets interesting for California specifically, there's another surge of monsoon moisture that forecasters are watching for Thursday, which could push into the Imperial, Riverside, and San Bernardino County areas of Southern California. That would mean another round of afternoon and evening thunderstorm chances for the deserts and mountains of the Southland. And there's a wild card sitting even further out. Some model guidance suggests tropical moisture could work its way into California later this week, though I want to be upfront with you. Confidence in that scenario is still low. This is very much a watch and see situation rather than a lock. We'll keep tracking it and update you as the picture sharpens. Which brings us to the most dramatic piece of tonight's forecast. Here's the story with real teeth. A tropical storm has formed in the eastern Pacific south of the Baja California Peninsula, and it's on a trajectory that has hurricane forecasters paying close attention. The system, Tropical Storm Elita, the fifth named storm of this year's eastern Pacific season, developed well offshore of Mexico and has been tracking generally westward. As of the latest advisories, Elita is carrying maximum sustained winds in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 miles per hour with higher gusts, and forecasters expect steady strengthening over the next couple of days. The official outlook has the storm reaching hurricane strength by Thursday night, with peak intensity likely arriving on Friday. There's a shift expected in its motion too. After moving west, the system is forecast to trend more northwestward and slow down somewhat by Thursday night. Right now, there are no coastal watches or warnings in effect, and there's no direct hazard to land at this stage. Elita is staying well offshore. But here's why this matters for anyone near the California coast. Even a hurricane that never makes landfall can radically change conditions along the shoreline from hundreds of miles away, simply through the ocean swell energy it generates. Forecasters are watching for increased wave activity along the California coast heading into this weekend as a result of Elita's presence out in the Pacific. If you're a surfer, this is the kind of setup that gets circled on the calendar, but it's also the kind of setup that creates dangerous rip currents and unpredictable surf for anyone just wanting to wade in the ocean. Lifeguards up and down the coast will likely be watching this closely as the weekend approaches. The bigger open question, and one meteorologists are genuinely uncertain about right now, is whether any of Elita's tropical moisture gets pulled northward into California itself, on top of what the monsoon is already delivering. If that connection happens, we could be talking about a much wetter, stormier end to the week than currently forecast. If it doesn't happen, Elita stays offshore as essentially a wave and surf story rather than a rain story for California. We simply don't have enough confidence yet to tell you definitively which way that goes. So consider this one of the storylines we'll be refining hour by hour as new model runs come in. I see a comment from someone down in San Diego asking if they should cancel weekend beach plans. I'd say don't cancel yet, but do check back with us Thursday and Friday before you commit, especially if young kids or inexperienced swimmers are involved. That swell could be significant. Now let's talk about the fire weather picture, because unfortunately, several of tonight's stories are stacking on top of each other in the worst possible way when it comes to wildfire risk. First, the baseline conditions. Much of the West is simply dry right now. Vegetation that dried out under weeks of heat is primed to burn, and that dryness alone elevates fire danger heading into any ignition source. Second, we've got that dry lightning risk in the Sierra Nevada that I mentioned earlier. Dry lightning refers to lightning strikes that occur with little or no rain reaching the ground beneath the storm. The moisture evaporates before it hits the surface, but the electrical charge still does its job. That's historically one of the most dangerous fire-starting mechanisms in California, responsible for some of the most destructive wildfire seasons on record. With scattered thunderstorm activity continuing over higher terrain, that risk remains live tonight and into tomorrow. And third, this is the piece I really want you to pay attention to if you live anywhere near the coastal mountain ranges of Santa Barbara or Ventura counties. We've got gusty, dry, northerly winds developing tonight through Thursday morning. These are the notorious sundowner winds, so named because they tend to kick up right around sunset as the temperature and pressure gradient between the interior and the coast peaks for the day. Sundowner events are locally famous and locally feared because they can take a small, manageable fire and turn it into a wind-driven, fast-moving emergency in a matter of minutes. Current guidance suggests wind gusts in the range of 35 to 55 miles per hour in the areas most prone to these winds, with lower but still notable gusts of 20 to 40 miles per hour elsewhere across the fire weather zone. Combine that with minimum humidity readings as low as 10 to 25%, and you've got a textbook recipe for what fire officials call plume-dominated fire growth, meaning if a fire does start, it can generate its own weather system and spread explosively, largely independent of the surrounding wind field. Because of all this, red flag warnings and critical fire weather alerts have been issued across parts of the region, generally running from midday Wednesday through Thursday morning. If you live in one of these zones, tonight is the night to double-check your evacuation plan, keep vehicles fueled, avoid any outdoor activity that could produce a spark, mowing dry grass, dragging trailer chains, using power tools outdoors, and stay tuned to local alerts through the overnight hours. So let's zoom out for a second and make sense of everything we've just covered, because on the surface, these might sound like four unrelated stories. They're not. They're all connected pieces of the same broader pattern. We've got a strong ridge of high pressure parked over the interior Southwest, which is responsible for the intense heat baking California's valleys and deserts. That same ridge is helping draw monsoon moisture up out of Mexico and into the Southwest states, fueling the thunderstorm and lightning activity we're seeing from the Sierra Nevada down through Arizona and New Mexico. Meanwhile, out in the eastern Pacific, warm ocean waters are helping spin up systems like Tropical Storm Elida, adding yet another moisture source into the mix. One that could, if the atmospheric setup cooperates, connect with that monsoon flow and change California's rain picture entirely. Looking further out, the 6 to 10 day outlook continues to favor above average warmth across the entire western United States. This isn't a one and done heat event that breaks completely by the weekend. It's more of a hot summer pattern that eases in intensity but doesn't fully step aside. And the monsoon itself shows every sign of staying active through the rest of this month, which means more rounds of thunderstorms, more lightning, and continued uncertainty about exactly how much, if any, of that tropical moisture ultimately reaches California's populated areas versus staying locked over Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. For those of you outside California watching tonight, in the Rockies, across the desert Southwest, or anywhere the monsoon is active, the message is straightforward. Expect the thunderstorm pattern to continue. Expect it to bring both welcome moisture and real hazards in the form of lightning, gusty winds, and localized flash flooding, especially in and around burn scars and steep terrain where runoff concentrates quickly. Let me leave you with the practical version of everything we just covered, because I know weather segments can sometimes feel like a wall of numbers. Here's what actually matters depending on where you live. If you're in the Central Valley or inland Southern California, today and tomorrow are genuinely dangerous heat days. Limit outdoor exertion during peak afternoon hours, check on elderly neighbors or relatives without air conditioning, and never leave kids or pets in a parked car, even for a few minutes. If you're along the Santa Barbara or Ventura coastline or anywhere sundowner winds typically affect, treat tonight through tomorrow morning as an elevated fire risk window. Avoid outdoor spark sources and have a plan ready. If you're in the desert Southwest, Arizona in particular, watch the sky in the afternoon and evening for approaching dust walls, and don't drive into reduced visibility conditions if you can avoid it. And if you're along the California coast, especially in the south, keep an eye on surf and rip current advisories as we move toward the weekend, with Elida's swell energy set to arrive. That's tonight's rundown of what is genuinely one of the more dynamic weather setups we've tracked this summer. Extreme heat, active monsoon thunderstorms, a strengthening tropical system offshore, and elevated fire danger, all unfolding at the same time across the West. Before we go, let's check back in on some of your comments. I want to thank everyone who's been sharing their local conditions tonight. It's genuinely one of my favorite parts of this broadcast, because the data on our maps only tells part of the story. You all fill in the rest block by block in real time. If you haven't already, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from tonight, and what's the weather actually doing where you are right now? Is it hot, humid, smoky, stormy, or surprisingly calm? I'll be reading through them after the show. We'll have updated tracking on Tropical Storm Elida, the latest on that potential Thursday moisture surge into Southern California, and any changes to fire weather alerts on our next broadcast. Stay cool, stay alert, and we'll see you next time.